Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our TSX webinar. Talk, Share, Exchange webinars offer a chance for the broker channel to chat about technology, share success stories, and support wider adoption of technology. Our topic today is user experience design, or UX design for short. We've seen over the past few years that many member brokerages of CSIO have improved their websites, apps, and other digital products from a UX standpoint. But certainly there is still a lot of work to be done by other brokerages in improving the UX of their digital products, and this will ultimately help the independent broker channel compete more effectively with direct writers. I'm Grant Patton, Digital Media and User Experience Specialist, your facilitator for today. I've done a lot of UX related work for CSIO over the past few years, including significant contributions to the 2012 and 2016 redesigns of CSIO.com and the design of various online tools, including the CSIO Technology Scorecard. I'd like to introduce you to our two panelists from Shill Insurance Brokers based in British Columbia. We've invited them as panelists on this webinar because they have a very good, nicely designed brokerage website. You can check it out at shillinsurance.com. So Al Shill is an insurance expert who has been helping people and businesses manage risk for over 25 years. As president of Shill Insurance, Al is actively involved at all levels of the business, utilizing his knowledge of the marketplace to drive business strategy and operations. A longtime member of the White Rock, BC community, Al also proudly extends his leadership acuity to his community and has a true passion for charitable endeavors. Sitting on the board of directors for the Peace Arch Hospital and Community Health Foundation, Al participates in many charitable functions and contributes to several community causes, and Al also holds a CABE designation. Michelle Mears, for the past 5 years, Michelle has worked with Shill Insurance Brokers as their in-house communication specialist. Using a human-to-human approach, Michelle prides herself on the ability to recognize and articulate a distinct voice for every project, and that's not always restricted to the written word. From e-blast, public relations, and web marketing to the creative side of promotional literature, advertising, and artwork, you name it, she's done it. Michelle holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and sociology from Thompson Rivers University. So our agenda for today, we're just going to define what exactly we mean by user experience, go through some interesting stats. We'll talk about the planning phase of doing UX work, then the design stage, and we'll go into a section that's from an article that I wrote about a year ago in the Ontario Broker called Buying Tenant Insurance in the Broker Channel. Then we have some slides from Google that we've customized a bit under the consumer's path to purchasing insurance, that we'll share that section, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So what exactly do we mean by user experience? So UX can be defined as the totality of the experience a user has when interacting with a digital product. It can be their impressions and feelings, whether they're successful, whether they feel like coming back again. When that user is a customer, a potential customer, any single pain point or combination of pain points can result in a lost sale, meaning insurance brokers need to pay special attention to their website and our mobile app to ensure they attract and retain as much business as possible. So how can brokers build a good UX across their digital products? By following a UX design process, which generally means conducting thorough research and appropriately planning the design of the website or app before development. As Roger Pressman stated in his book, Software Engineering, A Practitioner's Approach, for every dollar spent to resolve a problem during product design, $10 would be spent on the same problem during development, and $100 or more if the problem had to be solved after the product's release. So following a research process like this will help you not get into that situation of having to fix so many problems after releasing the product. Shill Insurance Brokers, they are a CSIO technology leader. They scored 100% on the CSIO Technology Scorecard, and they followed a similar process for the development of their website, shillinsurance.com. We'll hear some details from them soon on how they went about that. And just some interesting other stats in this slide from a Fast Company article, similar numbers to above. Numerous industry studies have stated that every dollar spent on UX brings in between $2 and $100 in return. And 75% of users base your entire company's credibility on your website's design. Another interesting stat from VOPix Design. So let's talk about the planning stage here now, where you're thinking about whatever product you're going to build. So rather than launching into design and development right away, it's a good practice to spend some time on research before you build your new site or app or whatever digital product it may be. And ideally this research will be in the form of some direct user research, not just spending a few hours on Google. You'll learn the most and get the best product ideas if you actually go out and talk to your current and potential customers. For example, this could be surveys, user interviews, could potentially work with a research firm to assist with doing this research. If it's a redesign, you should spend some time analyzing your web analytics or find a specialist who can help. This will help you learn more about your users' needs and interests. Also, for a redesign, you may want to consider doing some usability testing on your existing site first. Usability testing is a way to see how easy to use something is by testing it with real users. Users are asked to complete tasks, typically while they are being observed by a researcher, to see where they encounter problems and experience confusion. Not necessarily in person. It can be done remotely using tools such as usertesting.com, which we'll show later in the webinar. And this process often reveals some great ideas for a redesign. You may also want to consider doing a competitive analysis, identifying your competitors' websites and evaluating their strategies to determine their strengths and weaknesses relative to those of your product. In looking at your competitors' sites, do you see any low-hanging fruit where improvements can obviously be made? If so, these could maybe be prioritized in your redesign. For your analysis to be as accurate as possible, it is advisable to ask a third party to maybe conduct one on your behalf. It is important that you be as objective as possible. Using in-house staff could bias your evaluation a little. And firms specializing in digital strategy and consulting should be able to assist with this. Finally, after doing your user research, you should consider building some personas to represent your key user groups. A persona, as seen in the Clark Andrews example in this slide, is a representation of one of your key customer types. And personas answer the question, who are we designing for? And they help to align strategy and goals to specific user groups. Going through this persona creation process often reveals specific design ideas. And having personas also helps keep your team on the same page regarding who you're designing for. When someone has a new feature idea, ask yourselves if that feature idea aligns with the research and user personas. Will it clearly address a persona's needs? If so, it's probably a good feature idea. If it's not so clear, maybe that feature idea should be reconsidered. So we do have a poll question for everyone now. It's launched now. How much research did you do when designing your last website or mobile app? So again, how much research did you do when planning the last design of your website and or app, whatever digital product it was? Just interested to see the responses here, so I'll leave that up for another 10 seconds. Okay, I'll close the poll now. Thanks for your responses. And I'll share the results. So it's good to see that at least a moderate amount of research is being done by people rather than just launching right in the building. Generally don't want to launch right in the building too quickly. So I would like to see the numbers ideally come up even a little bit higher. Because the research phase is definitely very important in web design and development, and sometimes that is neglected a little bit. And okay, thanks for your responses there, everyone. I'll just hide those results now. And so we do have a question for our panelists. So to Shill Insurance, what kind of research and competitive analysis did you do during the planning stages of your website?
So we wanted to challenge the conventional and do something a little different than what you'd see in like a typical insurance website. Essentially, we sell the same thing. It's a commodity, and we felt that the only way to stand out is to add a little personality and stray from the norm. So we looked at all types of websites, what we actually liked in different types of websites, and sort of incorporated that into our newest design. Nothing actually came from another insurance website. We looked a lot at our analytics. I mean, this isn't our first website redesign. It's malleable. We're constantly changing. So we've looked at what was successful in the past and what works and what doesn't work, and sort of changed it as we go.
Okay, thanks for that. So now regarding a sitemap is a list of pages of a website accessible to crawlers or users. It can be either a document used as a planning tool for web design or a page that lists the pages on a website, typically organized in hierarchical fashion. It's a good idea to spend some time thinking about your sitemap before launching into design or development. Don't let this just be an afterthought. The sitemap provides a bird's eye view of your entire site, so you can see in one view if you think you're capturing all your relevant content pages and if they seem logically organized. If it's a redesign, you could do before versus after sitemaps. So the sitemap in place now versus the new sitemap with your information architecture improvements. Specific ideas on what these improvements can be could come out of the usability testing process. Shill worked with a marketing company to help them build their website from start to finish. One of the first tasks the marketing firm completed was constructing a sitemap to lay out the structure and general flow of the site. The firm also did some usability testing on the website prior to launch to iron out some small kinks that existed. It's also advisable to follow a prototyping process when building your new website or digital product. Here we see an example of a low-fidelity prototype that is sketchy and incomplete, that has some characteristics of the target product, but is otherwise simple, usually in order to quickly produce the prototype and test broad concepts. A medium-fidelity prototype is a prototype with limited functionality but clickable areas, presenting the interactions and navigation possibilities of an application. And a high-fidelity prototype is a computer-based interactive representation of the product in its closest resemblance to the final design in terms of visuals, details, and functionality. It might look a lot like the final product but isn't actually coded. This screenshot is a hi-fi prototype created using the software Adobe XD. Many other prototyping tools are on the market and could be used instead. Collecting feedback from your current or potential users all along this process and incorporating it is the most effective way to an excellent design. The earlier you start collecting this feedback, the better. Don't wait until you've already coded your version 1 live product before you finally get some user feedback. You could potentially do a usability test on one of these prototypes, for example, and collect and incorporate that feedback before anything is coded. So now we're in our design and implementation section. Determining what your homepage call to action should be and how to go about placing it is an important decision for any business's website. Michelle, when I interviewed you for the BC Broker article, you said that looking at the analytics of your site, you saw people were often trying to contact you right away. So you made sure to put a strong CTA to the Shill phone numbers at the top. Can you talk a little more about CTAs and how you use them on the Shill website and how effective your conversions have been?
Yep. Sorry. We really tried to focus on the end goal of requesting a quote just to generate some warm leads. So you'll notice this call to action throughout our site as well. We looked at our Google Analytics to see what was important to the current users, and as you mentioned, we noticed a high percent, actually more than 50, were accessing our site via mobile device, and many were going directly to our Contact Us page. So on our mobile site, we implemented a click-to-call and an email button. And we put a very visible number throughout our site. So we've had great conversion rates with this, and many people actually also fill out our online forms and directly call us.
Okay, thanks. And of course, the Shill website has a visually appealing UI design, heavy on orangey tones and combined with black and white imagery. It makes the web pages pop because of the contrast. The site also makes nice use of white space to let the UI elements breathe without trying to cram too much information onto one page. So here I'll ask you, how did you come up with your website's visual UI design and color scheme?
So we wanted, as you mentioned, to make the colors pop. So we focused on our brand color, which is orange. And so we use the monochromatic images to sort of let the important elements pop. So the call to actions and the headers and all such really stand out that way. And to use a lot of white space. We also notice people react differently to different things, but a combination of images and a little bit of copy are good. So you want a little bit of both, but you don't want to overwhelm on either or.
Right. Okay, now responsive design. The Shill website is a responsive design, which is a site with a flexible layout that creates dynamic changes to the appearance of its web pages, depending on the screen size, as illustrated in this screenshot here. Michelle, in our prior interview, you said that when you first came onto the company years ago, the website at the time wasn't responsive, but you felt a need for it because you looked at the analytics. More than half the visitors were looking at the website through their phone, I think you said. Can you talk about how you went about implementing this responsive design and any special considerations for brokers who might be considering going responsive?
Yeah, for sure. We've had the responsive design for over 5 years. Prior to this redesign, it was one of the first things I did when I came on board at Shill. Especially because most people nowadays have a smartphone. I think it's really important a website has it. And because I guess when you talk about responsive design, it's important to realize that when people are looking on their phones, they pretty much want something immediate, like to contact you. So there should definitely be like a click to call or email right away. So because they're not want to mess around on their phones.
Right.
The focus, just to add to that, the focus on our site is definitely the contact piece. We're not going to sell on it as much as we are just trying to get a quick contact to the client, and react as fast as we can.
Okay, I see. Good. So I'll just note that there's also the option to implement a separate mobile website instead of a responsive design, but Google actually recommends responsive. This is a quote from their developer documentation. We recommend using responsive web design because it helps Google's algorithms accurately assign indexing properties to the page rather than needing to signal the existence of corresponding desktop/mobile pages. The use of authentic-looking, impromptu imagery of people and sometimes even animals throughout the Shill website is an effective design choice, as there's been research indicating the power of faces in user experience. When users can relate to the images they see, it influences whether or not they stay on your site. Standard stock photos that are bland, rehearsed, and inauthentic are typically less relatable. Where possible, use real photos that appeal to your target audience and reflect your brand. A number of websites featuring beautiful high-res free photos have been created as a reaction against traditional bland stock imagery and can be found through Google. Some examples are pictured here: the website Death to Stock and the website Unsplash. So certainly make note of those if you're not yet aware of them. So Al and Michelle, I see you've done an effective job of projecting your brokerage personality through the imagery on your site. Can you talk a bit about your brokerage personality and how did you decide on the photography and imagery to use on your site?
So we really wanted to stray, as I mentioned before, from the traditional, and we wanted to go for a more friendly and quirky approach. Insurance can be kind of a dry subject, so injecting a little personality with fun images and or copy is a way to let clients know of more of our softer side. So I really looked through the internet and found something that was usable and relatable to people, but could still be incorporated into the content. And we do get a lot of compliments on it, so it's nice to know that it works.
It works well with our sort of personality, our culture. And we're not an overly old bunch, I would say, and we try not to be typical. So we really didn't, if we're not typical in our locations and in the things that we do day to day, then why would we want to be typical on our website?
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, you're doing a good job of it. So this brings us to our next main section, the UX of buying tenant insurance in the broker channel. In 2016, when I rented a condo in downtown Toronto and learned that the landlord requires tenant insurance, I thought it would be a great opportunity to experience firsthand the process of searching online for insurance in the broker channel. These findings were originally published in a summer 2016 article in the Ontario Broker. My expectations included each website having a simple and clear online quote form that only asked essential information and a quick turnaround time. I documented my interactions with 3 brokerage websites that I found via Google search, identifying strengths of each and opportunities to enhance the consumer's online purchasing journey. While I visited many brokerage websites, 3 in particular stood out as demonstrating both best practices and areas for improvement, as documented in this table. Let's have a look at each of these brokerage websites one by one and discuss each point. Brokerage number 1 and error handling. This online quote form made effective use of a progress bar, also called completeness meter, telling me where I was in the process and how many steps remain. You'll often see these user interface elements in web apps from companies like Google and LinkedIn. Research shows that forms without progress bars often have lower completion rates, which for insurance brokers would result in abandoned applications. That being said, I was disappointed when I completed the form and received the error message, "We're sorry, your request cannot be processed at this time," and an invitation to call the brokerage instead. This is an example of not following heuristics, the principles of UX that support users in learning how to use and what to expect from a website. Jacob Nielsen, an expert in web usability, has a set of these heuristics that includes error handling. His heuristic says error messages should be expressed in plain language, no codes, precisely indicate the problem, and constructively suggest a solution. This message failed to indicate what caused the error, leaving me less motivated to call and follow up. As well, the first page of the form had asked me for my contact information, which raised 2 questions. Why did I have to provide this information up front instead of obtaining the quote first, and then deciding if I wanted to follow up? 2, if the site already had my contact information, why did the error message not include an option for the broker to contact me instead? Brokerage number 2 and user expectations. I was pleased with the flow of this form. It didn't ask for contact information until after I received the quote. It also followed the Nielsen heuristic of aesthetic and minimalist design by being simple and uncluttered with unnecessary fields. This is important, as a study from usability expert Luke Wroblewski showed that when an 11-field form was shortened to 4 fields, there was a massive increase in both submissions and conversions. I entered my information and contact preferences and, in what struck me as a nice touch, immediately received an automated email from the president of the brokerage, personalized with my name and promising a follow-up from a broker. So a question to Shill Insurance. Have you simplified the forms on your website as much as possible? And if so, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, we kept it pretty simple. We think it's important to have the basic info, and the attention span of a user is really short, and the role of a broker is actually to have that conversation. So we just want to get the basic info, and then we can talk to them about what they need to know. There's too much room for error and annoyance by a long form. So just a little preliminary info, like your line of business, what you're looking for, and a couple introductory questions are enough to get you started. Our online forms are simple and easy, and we found that they're utilized often. And it's important to note on response time here too. So we do our best to respond as soon as we get a form in, even if it's just to thank them and let them know that the appropriate person will be in touch with them soon.
Okay, good. Still on brokerage number 2 and user expectations here. Another important UX concept is setting and meeting user expectations. Despite requesting email, my broker followed up by telephone instead. This wasn't a big deal for me, but when even minor expectations aren't met, customers can lose trust in your business. Would this brokerage fall short of expectations in the future, in a situation with higher stakes? If you establish an expectation via your website or any other medium, consistently meet that expectation to maintain the best image for your business. Brokerage number 3 and paperless workflow. Like brokerage number 1, the online quote featured a progress bar, a strength, but also required my contact information up front, an example of unintuitive flow. That said, their follow-up customer service was excellent, arriving when and how I expected it to by email. However, the final step of signing my application did not use e-signatures. In fact, the PDF I received looked as though it had been printed and scanned rather than generated directly from their BMS. So with e-signatures, brokers can send a clean, original PDF to be signed by customers directly on their mobile devices or computers. After conducting business with this broker electronically, suddenly having to print, sign, and scan a paper document was an inconvenience and felt a little like a step backwards. You can read more about e-signatures on CSIO.com. A question to Shill Insurance here. Do you use e-signatures, and if so, how do you think it has improved the customer/user experience at your brokerage?
So we do use e-signatures, and it has improved our level of efficiency with the client. So we can quickly send documents for signatures and receive them back without the client having to print, sign, and scan back. It's particularly useful if they have a smart device. It's super easy. And we also love that there's a timestamp feature that allows us to track when the document is sent, received, opened, and returned. We receive a timestamp that authenticates the document. E-signatures also integrate with our client management system so that we don't need to import documents. Everything is at the fingertips of the agent, which is increasing our efficiency, productivity, and accountability in the end.
I think it speaks to just what we want to be in terms of how we communicate with our clients too. So being consistent in if a client chooses that they want to be very email centric and receive everything that way, doesn't want to speak on the phone, then this really helps with that user experience for that particular client.
Right. Sounds good. So our next section here is the consumer's path to purchasing insurance. This research was originally done by Google, so thanks to them for allowing us to use these slides for this section of the webinar. So the main stages are the thinking, researching, and then purchasing stages. The thinking stage tends to last around 9 days, where the consumer is just kind of beginning to think about acquiring insurance, but they haven't yet started. And then the researching stage tends to last about 3 days, where the consumer takes on a more active role. They're doing some research now. And then the purchasing stage tends to last just about 2 days, where they have a fairly good idea of what product they want to go with. And they're going to start visiting branches or maybe looking at websites. So let's first talk about the thinking stage. So this is the longest stage for most consumers. They're not actively looking at any particular brands. We can ask ourselves here, what could potentially trigger the thinking process around buying insurance? Would it be new goods, a life event? So of the about 4,000 customers surveyed by Google in this study, there were two main triggers. So 95% was the top trigger for a product, so a car, for example, and then 65% had a life trigger, which is obviously not as relevant to the P&C industry, but interesting numbers there anyway. So the top 5 triggers are listed in this slide. These are the first notions of intent for consumers. Advertisers don't always target these triggers, so they give some ideas on how brokerages could effectively tailor their user experience to address customers. The renewal being the top trigger at 55%, purchased an item that needed coverage in second place with 33%. So bringing this back to user experience, how can you effectively tailor the UX of your digital products, for example, website, app, to speak to these customers while they're still in this thinking stage? And of course, the earlier you can get potential customers thinking about your company, the better, and having customers thinking about you at this early stage comes down primarily to your brand. What kind of story are you telling about your brokerage online? When we're creating content in the digital space, it should fall in one of these 3 buckets that you currently see on the screen: company, client, community. In that intersection is your story. Where are those 3 buckets interacting? You need to pay attention to that intersection to get some good ideas around what your story could be. So for example, why does your receptionist, the first person that people see, why has she been working for you for 20 years? Because hopefully you foster a work atmosphere that's so positive that she couldn't imagine working anywhere else. This kind of positive story should be told online as part of your brand marketing. Hopefully you have a similarly positive story that you can tell about your brokerage online to build up your online presence and brand concept. Over time, this will strengthen your brand and get customers thinking about you in these early stages. Good quote from Agency Nation here just drives home the point. You should check out this website if you haven't yet. A lot of good digital tips on there for insurance brokers. It's American content mostly, but a lot of the material can be applied to Canadian brokerages also. So the overall point is just finding that unique angle to your brokerage, which often involves the people at your brokerage, and start telling that story online. If you haven't hired anyone well-versed in social media and digital marketing yet, consider doing so and tasking them with this project, although this should be something that has buy-in from the entire brokerage, not just one person. This screenshot just shows how Shill is doing a good job of telling their brokerage story and building their brand online. Many Shill employees there looking casual and relaxed in t-shirts. It looks like they're having a good time, just reinforcing the idea that they're professional and take their business seriously, but maybe don't take themselves too seriously. So this is the kind of picture that you probably wouldn't see on a lot of other insurance brokerage websites. So again, it's just a good example of showing your brokerage's unique personality through your online presence, and this is something that all brokerages should consider doing, whatever your brokerage personality may be. So to Shill Insurance, how are you conveying your brand, your brokerage's brand and personality through your online presence, maybe besides photographs like that?
Well, obviously doing what we do, trust is a huge factor and important in our marketing message. So we tackle this through a variety of ways. The About Us section on both of our business and personal sites is an important aspect of the design process. And in an era where the consumer is really the one with all the power, a company really needs to show its authenticity. And so we do things like social media sites. We have a few: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We do write a blog as well, which has personality in the articles that we try to convey. We try to help out our clients as much as possible. We don't block any of the content. And we have a resource section as well with the same idea. We're there to help you, not and guide you. So.
Yeah, and it intertwines with what we do in our branches too. Like it's not like we have one personality for online and we just want it to be different there. I mean, everything we do, throughout our offices correlates to what we do online. So there's a high level of consistency there.
Okay, thanks for that. So now the researching phase of the path to purchase. Once the consumer has decided he will go ahead with buying insurance, the research stage starts in earnest. Where that research stage starts is very important. Usually starts on a search engine such as Google. So the role of internet in the research stage of insurance is of course huge. 55% from this Google study using the internet to learn about whatever product they may want to learn about, 50% to find information to help them decide, and 46% are looking to simplify a decision. So consumers are looking at what information is out there so they can learn enough to make the right decision. So this is a great opportunity to ensure you not only have relevant information on your website, but that you have a user-friendly, visually appealing website. When consumers are researching insurance online, you'll need an SEO, search engine optimization strategy, to be found. We won't spend a lot of time on SEO here because this webinar focuses more on UX, and we do have a separate webinar and white paper on SEO that you can find on csio.com right now. But just as a quick summary, this is for the search Insurance Broker Saskatoon. Galan Insurance Brokers comes up as the top spot when I did this search. So they're doing a good job of content creation. They maintain a blog, they have videos, they're on social media. But to maintain this top spot on Google, you're also going to want to ensure that your brokerage website has minimal user experience and usability issues. Why? UX and SEO interrelate. Google has been updating its algorithm to try to automatically identify UX issues and penalize a website in the rankings if many of these issues are found. So UX issues could therefore prevent brokerages from reaching their full potential in organic search. Crafting a thoughtful, empathetic user experience helps ensure that visitors to your site perceive it positively, encouraging social sharing and linking to your site on other sites, all signals that trickle down to the search engines and contribute to higher rankings. And you'll want to do standard SEO best practices, namely content creation. Examples of content creation would be infographics, white papers, videos, blog posts. It's all about having interesting and useful content on your site, and this will improve the overall user experience offered on your site. So to Shill Insurance, what does your brokerage do in terms of ongoing content creation for SEO?
So our blog and our resource center has really been successful in this respect. We don't lock the content, as I mentioned before, as we really want to add to the user experience. We send out a monthly newsletter that links back to the content on our site, which is helpful for SEO. We also implemented a Google review campaign. We try to get as many positive Google reviews as possible because Google owns the world. And they do a great job of helping us with that peer-to-peer.
Yeah, I got to give the team kudos. They've done an excellent job of getting Google reviews, whether at the branch level or being driven by our management team. It's been an exceptional experience.
Okay, great. And what do you use for your newsletter creation? Do you use MailChimp or?
We use Constant Contact.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've heard that's a good product too. Okay. So our purchasing stage, and just as a reminder, you can submit questions through the chat panel if you have any. The final and perhaps the most important stage is the consumer purchasing insurance stage. This is where having a good or bad user experience can make or break closing the deal for a digital customer. What kind of support does a person need during the purchase process? These are the 3 classifications of digital consumers Google came up with in the study. So there's the hand holder. They don't do any research, wants the broker to do everything, prefer human contact, not comfortable using online tools. The facilitator, they'll do some research, wants the broker to help, and might have questions along the way. And self-serve, buys insurance on their own from beginning to end. The broker might help in writing the applications, but they would confirm their product choices themselves and all that. So interesting to keep these classifications in mind as you are going about building your products and thinking about which classifications you maybe have to cater to more than others. You'll want to optimize the purchase action after thinking and researching have been completed. 3 main factors for doing this optimization are speed. You will lose customers if your site or app is slow. Usability. Your site needs to be easy to use for everyone. You do not want your potential customers to be frustrated as they use your site. And features that matter. So features that work well for the product you're selling and that your user actually wants and finds useful. So nothing extraneous. We're going to talk specifically more about mobile here because it's such an area of growing importance, but these principles also apply to desktop or any kind of product design really. So of course nobody likes to see this for very long at all, and an interesting stat is right there. So a speed tip would be ensure your site or app isn't overloaded with unnecessary images or modules. Only include the features that really meet user needs and drive purchases and conversions. Everything else can be excluded. Have a look through your current site and ask yourselves if every module really needs to be there. And with CSIO.com, for example, we used to have a Twitter embed on our homepage, but in the 2016 redesign of CSIO.com, we decided to exclude it as we found that it was having a small impact on homepage loading time. Removing the widget contributed toward improving the site speed. So we still use Twitter, but we just don't have the embed on our homepage anymore. And a really useful resource here is Google's Page Speed Insights. Check your site on this tool to see if Google says it's a slow user experience or not. The tool gives specific technical suggestions on what to tweak to improve site performance. You don't necessarily have to do something major like change servers or redesign the entire site. It provides a report to your developer, and they should likely be able to make some improvements to your site performance based on that report. And the URL is listed at the bottom of this slide, or you can just Google Page Speed Insights. So mobile devices are optimized for the usage of the thumb. Here are some apps that were among the first to really take advantage of that user behavior. Tinder has dead simple UX based on the usage of your thumb. After spending a couple of minutes, you could potentially be matched with dozens of people simply by using your thumb swiping action. Hotel Tonight, a great example of differentiation through a clever use of original UX. You just have to use your thumb to complete your booking, which is a simpler process than what the competitors had, usually multiple form pages. So Hotel Tonight was able to grab a part of a very competitive market versus competitors like Expedia, Booking.com, and Trivago. So insurance brokerages and companies can take inspiration from simple interfaces like these in unrelated industries and try to incorporate this philosophy of simple and clear UI design into their products. Looking at interfaces like these can help you think about simpler, more innovative ways of presenting insurance information to customers. Using the native features of mobile is a good idea to do wherever possible, such as geolocation. In this example, instead of asking the customer to fill in their zip code, you could just prompt them for permission to use their current location. This example is a mobile app, but the same functionality could be done on a mobile website. Also using the geolocation API in HTML5, which is used to get the geographical position of a user. So when you're doing your next website redesign, think about ways you can increase user convenience by incorporating functionality such as this. Here's another example where that Nielsen heuristic applies about error messaging. State Farm fails to indicate the problem. They're just giving a vague technical difficulties response. This is obviously going to frustrate users after they just filled out a form. But errors will of course occur from time to time, and the example on the right shows a better way of error handling, which at least explains what went wrong. Also, consider using inline validation on your forms. Inline validation gives users several types of real-time feedback. It can confirm an appropriate answer, suggest valid answers, and provide immediate feedback to help users stay within limits. These bits of feedback can be presented before, during, or after users type in the form field, more or less in real time. So incorporate inline validation into your forms where possible for a better user experience. And just a bit of general advice on forms would be to just try to trim down the length of those forms as much as possible. Maybe you don't need to capture all of that information up front. You'll almost definitely get an increase in submissions and conversions if you make your forms shorter and simpler. So consider doing a usability test on some of your key forms to identify potential issues. So how do you do a usability test? Well, here is a great resource for doing quick and easy usability testing, usertesting.com. You just pay a small fee and tell the platform what kind of user you're looking for. You can specify the age, income level, country, for example, and link them to what you'd like them to test. And usually within just a few hours, you'll receive a video of one of these users speaking their thoughts as they go through your website, app, or prototype. So watching an unbiased video like this can be very helpful in generating ideas for web design and usability improvements. So a final question to our panelists here would be, what is your advice to brokers interested in building a website of comparable quality to yours?
Well, I think it's important to know that you find good help. So use a reliable company, preferably somebody that might have been recommended to you. There's so many experts out there, so know when you need help. And make sure you ask a lot of questions. And
yeah, I'd say, I guess it depends on what stage you're into. Is if this is a relatively new project for you, then don't feel like you need to accomplish everything at once. Break it down into stages. So if your site doesn't, work on just a nice clean site that's easy to navigate and that has good response, and then maybe add tools and resources in the next stage. And then maybe stage 3 is the contact form and how you're going to manage that contact form and respond to it. And then the one that's still out there for us is, the purchasing of insurance. We're not convinced that clients really want it enough yet for us to invest a ton of money in it. So it's sort of like maybe stage 4 for us that we haven't quite got to. And then the other thing too is that this is not just a project that you do complete and then wipe your hands of it. It is ongoing. I think Michelle said we're in either our 5th or 6th generation of website, and we're actually working on one right now that will come out probably the end of January. So it's constantly evolving, and it's just a piece of everything else we do. It's not a magic bullet, and it's not something we rely on to be our only source of who are we, but it goes hand in hand with everything else that we do.
Yeah, good point there about feature prioritization. Definitely important to do that and not try to necessarily do everything in version 1. How did you go about determining what your key features were, the most important ones?
Geez, I don't remember because we started on this so long ago, but I think that probably came out of our work with the folks that helped us with our first website, and they sort of helped us identify what's most important, and
Yeah.
one of the things that sort of made us a little nervous, just even around the contact form, is okay, you're putting this form out there, somebody sends it, well, who's going to respond to it, and how long will it take? And even in our organization right now, I still watch that email, and because I'm the one who's got it on, 24 hours a day, and so as soon as I see it, even if, and more times than not, it's just a simple question that I can answer. But if it's not something that I can dive into right away, then I just respond really quickly, like saying, sorry, that department's closed now, but they're open, at this time, and we'll make sure that we get to you first thing, sort of thing, and that goes a long way.
And when I came on and noticed, I really increased the About Us section just because I felt that people kind of need to know. Like I knew the people I worked with, and I thought they were all really amazing, and I just thought that it should have been out there a little bit more. So we worked on that, and it's been really well received as well.
Okay, good
I
stuff.
think it's important too, just my last point is to make it consistent with everything else you're doing. So if your back office stuff, like your stationery and every piece, every client touch point is a little different, get some consistency there before you start broadcasting it to the world online. You really need to have some clarity of where your starting point is and get those things consistent so that, the newspaper ad doesn't look different from the flyer that you do to the business card that you send out to now you're putting it out on your website. And some of our offices, you get different people helping you with different things, and there's no consistency to it. So I'd encourage everyone to really work on that.
Yeah, good point. Establishing some kind of standards and style guide maybe around that is helpful. Okay, so for those interested in learning more about this subject of UX and usability, I'd recommend these 3 books. Don't Make Me Think is a pretty famous book you might already have heard about. It's written by Canadian usability expert Steve Krug. The book is actually pretty funny and includes many examples of various usability problems and how Krug would go about correcting them. The overall point is that you don't want to make your users think when interacting with your product. The more obvious, the better. The Elements of User Experience is a good, easily readable intro to the field of UX for anyone looking to learn more. And Web Form Design is definitely a niche topic book, but included here because I think it's particularly relevant to brokers and companies. If you're in the insurance industry, chances are your company's site has a lot of forms on it, and this is one of the main interactions customers have on your site. So certainly a good idea to learn about form design best practices from that book to make those forms streamlined and user-friendly. Find more articles, videos, and white papers related to UX design, digital marketing, and SEO under the Resources and Tools section on CSIO.com. And if you haven't yet, consider creating a CSIO.com member account to access and stay up to date on all our communications. And so from what I see here, there actually seem to not be any questions from the audience, so that's fine, fair enough. And we do have a poll question here, though, that I've launched right now. If everyone could just respond to this question, I'd appreciate it. It just helps us kind of assess the helpfulness of our webinars. So just letting us know if the webinar met your expectations. It's open right now. If you don't mind responding to that, please. Letting us know if you strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. I'll just leave that up for another couple seconds to let some more responses come in. Okay, thanks for the responses there. And hopefully the poll will actually close this time after I closed it. Yes, I think it did. Okay. So, yep. So thanks, everyone. A recording of this webinar and the slides can be found on CSIO.com shortly under the TSX webinars section of the website. And for those eligible, you'll receive your broker accreditation certificate in the next few weeks. Our next webinar is Digital Marketing for Brokers on Wednesday, December 13th. It'll include an overview of social media campaign best practices, including a deep dive on using Google AdWords for pay-per-click. So you can register for that now on CSIO.com under the event calendar if you'd like. And certainly a big thank you to our panelists from Shill Insurance. I think we definitely learned a lot from your information, and you definitely have a website that a lot of brokerages I think should look to for a good example. And so,
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I hope everyone found this webinar educational, and take care. Have a good day.